I see from this Sefer that I was learning from that we did this in the Shir in December 1995. So if anyone can remember it and wants to say the Shir over, you're welcome. Okay, so this is taken, a bit of this is taken from a Maimah by the Rebbe Rashab, and for those who want to look it up, it's called Tanu Rabbanan Ner Hanukkah, and it was 5643 for anyone who wants to look at it. Okay, so why I thought we'd learn some of these inyonim is that Hanukkah is a different festival to all our other Yom Tovim, in the sense that it's pregnant with a secret aspect, and that is that you'll see as the Rebbe Rashabs develops this idea that at a personal level, Hanukkah can be more meaningful to an individual than you can possibly imagine at the superficial level. At the core level of Hanukkah, as we'll learn what the core level of Hanukkah is, at the core level, it's really a summary of a Jew's consciousness and a Jew's ability to develop himself. There's one here, Menachem. But to get to that, we have to go through some much more mundane stuff so that we have a vocabulary together. So all the other Yomim Tovim we celebrate with eating and drinking and festivities to celebrate the occasion. Hanukkah we don't. Hanukkah is ultimately a celebration of light, and let me just tell you where this is going so you see it to the end. The issue of light is related to the issue of a Jew and his soul, and that's where this is all going to go to. But it's quite an obstacle course, so we have to go step by step. But so Hanukkah isn't party time in the sense of sitting and eating and drinking and saying l'chaim and all of that. You're allowed to do, of course, but it's really a festival in which we concentrate on light, on lighting the menorah progressively more every night, as everyone knows, and the menorah is powered by oil. We're going to think about this issue of oil because oil is a very special Gashmias commodity. So let's start with this. There's many Maimorim that starts my Hanukkah. What does Hanukkah mean? What are we celebrating? And there are actually, as we were saying before the Shir started, there are actually three miracles that we celebrate on Hanukkah. One miracle is the fact that what we say in the davening, we say it in the Shemoneh Esrei, and we say it in the benching, that it was a victory of the few over the many, and the weaker over the stronger. I mean, you have to understand we're talking about the Greek army with all its inherent strength against yeshiva bokrim. I mean, that's what it was. People, Matisyahu and Hashmonean people who were involved in this whole fight were sitting and learning. They didn't. What do they know about fighting a war so massively outnumbered. Now, the age in this room, it varies a bit, but for those people who remember the 6-Day War, you have to remember that Am Yisrael were terrified. At the beginning of the 6-Day War, you have to remember that the 6-Day War was what, 1967?
June
67. So we're talking about 12 years after the Holocaust finished. 12 years is, well, you think back 12 years from tonight. 22, sorry. You think back 22 years from tonight, it was nearly yesterday.
Yeah.
So people thought that what Hitler failed to achieve, you had 70 nations of Arabs committed to destroy Israel, and the Rebbe pronounced it as being miraculous at the beginning. He didn't actually say it was only going to last 6 days, but I mean, Rabbi Philman, who was in Kfar Chabad at the time, will tell you that he wrote into the Rebbe and said, you know, his parents wanted him to come home. Should he come home? And the Rebbe said, don't worry, the war will be over before you can come home. I mean, 6 days later, the war was over. This was an incredible miracle, but how much do we don't have a yontif for the 6-Day War. We kind of expect that miracle from our God. So, but the first miracle was that one, but that's not the miracle we celebrate. When we for example, when we celebrate the miracle of Yetzias Mitzrayim, we sit down and eat, we have a Seder, we talk about it, but that's not what we celebrate Hanukkah. What was the second miracle? The second miracle was that all the oil was defiled. They found one cruse of oil that wasn't defiled, and that was in itself miraculous, but that cruse of oil, which could only last, everybody knows, 1 day, ended up lasting 8 days. So that's not a miracle for 8 days, it's a miracle of 7 days. Because 1 day, the oil is naturally able to do it. So the second miracle was that they found the cruse of oil at all, and because you have to ask the question, how did the Greeks forget it? It wasn't in a secret hiding place, so how was it that they found it at all? The Greeks were able to defile everything else in the Beis HaMikdash. This one cruse of oil they didn't defile. The third miracle was that it burned for a further 7 days, which it wouldn't be able to do. So we celebrate the oil and not the army victory. Why do we celebrate the oil? That is the question that all the Hachamim have asked for centuries, because we don't even mention the oil in the davening. We don't mention the oil in the Shemoneh Esrei. We don't mention it in the benching. What do we mention? We mention but what is our yontif? Our yontif is the oil, and lighting it in a public place. And there are halachas about whether it's on the left side of the door, opposite the mezuzah, etc., etc. But the real obligation is to light it publicly. In public view. And the Beis HaMikdash, everybody knows that the windows were built the wrong way around. Instead of being narrow at the outside and big on the inside to protect against the weather, because they didn't have glass, so it was done the other way around. It was narrow on the inside and wide on the outside, so that the light from within, from the menorah, should be projected to the world. And that's a big clue on how you and I have to live. That a Jew, when he comes to terms with what this oil is, it's not for the benefit of ourselves, it's not for the benefit of locking it up and storing it and enjoying it privately. It is for the benefit of sharing and influencing other people for good. That's at the core of this. Now, so let's go to the first miracle with the fight. What did the Jews? What did the Greeks have against the Jews? The Greeks did not have against the Jews what Hitler did or Haman Yamakshimoy did. They didn't hate us because they just hated us. They didn't hate us. They didn't want to stop us practicing Judaism. You have to understand the psyche of Greece at the time, of Greeks at the time, started very much by Alexander, who was a friend of Alexander the Great, who was a friend of the Jews. But by the time it got to Ptolemy, the relationship soured very greatly. Why? Because the Greeks prided themselves on being the consummate civilization. They were the consummate intellect. They were the consummate logicians. They were the founders of Pythagoras, and they were founders of mathematics. They were the founders of beauty, and their sculpture and art was unique, best in the world. And what they wanted was, they were in pursuit, and their games, when they had their Olympic Games, that they worshipped, not worshipped, but were very interested in the perfection of the body, and the intellect, and the spirit. They didn't mind that either. On the contrary, they were sensitive. We regard them as pagan because they had many gods, but whether you have many gods or not many gods, it's still a spiritual aspect to living. So what was the problem? The problem was that, and they didn't mind that we daven. They didn't mind that we have religious services and go to shul, and didn't mind any of that. Didn't mind Pesach, didn't mind anything that we did. What they minded was that we did it in the name of God, not in the name of humanity. They said, it's perfectly all right for you to do whatever you like, but don't say God told you to do it. We have no evidence of that at all. We are rationalists. The difference between us and animals is our reason. We subscribe to paying homage to that reason, and life needs to be reasonable. And if you want to do all the things you want to do, Jewish dancing, Jewish music, Gesundheit, terrific. Culturally, it's wonderful. But don't tell me that God told you to do it, because we can't tolerate that. If you say that, you are saying that there is something that you have access to that we don't have access to, which is a statement of arrogance, and we're not interested in hearing that. And that was the position. And it's not really difficult to follow or understand. And in fact, unless you're a Jew, and unless you understand what we're going to be learning about Hanukkah and the menorah and the oil, then it really makes sense. Their whole perspective does make sense. But at the same time, it doesn't. For a Jew, it makes no sense. For a Greek, it makes absolute sense. Now, I don't want this to languish into a Jews are better than non-Jews, and we are superior, and we're the chosen race, and any of this stuff, because that's not how you should be learning. We learn that Jews are different to non-Jews. I'm fond of saying this because it needs to be said repeatedly. I was taught this repeatedly. It's a great, ignorant, stupid mistake to stumble around asserting your superiority when a Jew who's not behaving as a Jew has no right to talk like that. But the reality is that a Jew is different to a non-Jew in the same way as a hand is different to a foot on the human body. A hand has its purpose and a foot has its purpose. Is your hand better than your foot? It's not. Is your foot better than your hand? It's not. It's different. It has a different job. The job of the Greeks and the Gentile world is to build gashmis, is to build physicality. And the job of Jews is to infuse that physicality with godliness. So we have two different roles, and it's perfectly understandable that the Greeks didn't understand our role. Half the Jews on the planet don't understand our role. They don't feel comfortable until they understand our role. I must tell you, I know from experience. I'm fond of saying this often. I've been a lawyer in Double Bay, acting basically for Jews for 55 years. Most of them have been secular Jews. Most of them have brought to the table a level of dissatisfaction. They don't really know even why. They thought the answer was money. They made money. It didn't give them. They thought children. They had children. It didn't. They're still left hungry, still left spiritually wanting. And why is that? Because a hand is different to a foot, and a hand needs what a hand needs, and a foot needs what a foot needs. And what does a Jew need? A Jew needs the oil. We're going to learn this in a minute. So, okay. I'm going to take you through, we've been through this in this year many times, but I'm going to take you through the fact that Jews have, all humanity has a nephesh. Nephesh means a life force. The rest of humanity's life force has 4 levels. In Hebrew, they're called Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Chaya. Now those 4 levels are like this. 3 of them are in the body, 1 of them isn't in the body. The 4th one isn't in the body. Nefesh is our concept of the intellect. We function differently to an animal in that we have an intellect. If you want to say that animals think, well, they do. They think instinctively, and they know how to avoid pain and access pleasure. But fundamentally, an animal will react to a cue. So there'll be a stimulus and there will be a result. And that result is basically automatic. There's no thought process that goes into considering whether the animal should adopt this course of conduct or not. There aren't any moral reasons. There aren't any. There's a cue, and he reacts to that cue. Now, the first difference between a human being and an animal is that the human being, the lowest level of its life force, which is a nefesh, is the nefesh, the intellect. The next level is called ruach, which is the way we function with our emotions. And you should know, and it's very hard for a person to even get to first base of how to live if he doesn't understand that his emotions have to be governed by his intellect. So intellect is the lowest level, but it has to drive the next level. If you live a life where your emotion drives your intellect, you're going to be dysfunctional. You're going to have all the ills of modern woke life, where people sincerely trying to do good want to drive their intellect by emotion. It can't work, and it doesn't work. It's bigger than both of us, doesn't work. We fell in love as though that's a complete answer. It's no answer. It's no answer we fell in love. We fell in love. You've still got a brain to decide whether or not it's appropriate, whether or not you're going to harm a wife and 3 children and destroy a family unit and everything else that goes in it. So the second level is emotion, and that has to be driven by intellect. The third level is neshama, and that is action. That's taking the intellect, driving the emotion, and converting it into productive action. And we all do that, and people don't analyze it, but we're all familiar with that that dynamic. Now, those three levels of the soul are what's called mislabished in the guf. They're enclosed in the body. But the level of chaya, the next level, is not enclosed in the body, and it is a level which is supranatural. It's beyond natural, and let me give you an example which would apply to a Gentile as well. Trust. You go to it. If a person trusts, that trust is not a logical thing, it's not an emotional thing, and it's not an action thing. Oh, it becomes an action thing, but the source of that trust is supranatural. For example, you go to a doctor, and you're feeling sick, and God forbid, and the doctor prescribes you medicine, and you take the medicine. Now, I ask you, how many people would check the pharmaceutical content of the medicine? How many people would check what case studies have been with this medicine? How many people would? You don't check any of that. You just take it. You have one? Okay. So, but normal functioning, ordinary people, they get a prescription, and okay, if you don't trust 100%, you get a second opinion. But if 2 doctors or 3 doctors give you the same script, you're going to go away and take the script. You're not going to research it yourself. Normal people wouldn't research it themselves. This is the level of chai. But Jews have a 5th level to the neshama, which is called yehida. And yehida is the level which is not just intellect or emotion or action or logic. It is that part of our being which is a Halek Eloika Mimal, which is a part of God Himself. It is a common consciousness with our God. And the common consciousness that you and I have with our God is only unavailable to the extent that you don't exercise it. But there is a common consciousness that every Jew has with his God at one level or another. And it comes out at different times. It comes out in times which are spiritually appropriate, or more spiritually appropriate, less when you're involved in physical action, more when you're involved in spiritual action, more involved when you're davening, more involved when you're learning Torah, we're sitting together learning Torah now. You have a different consciousness at the moment, sitting together learning Torah, than you do when you're going out to some restaurant with a business associate or whatever. You're probably eating better food there. The lighting's better, the music's better. You're tricked up better in your fancy clothes to go to the restaurant. But you can't tell me that your consciousness is the same. It's not. Why? Because we have our 5th level to our soul, and by the way, this is reflected in, we're going through numbers before, but Torah is a repetition of numbers. I mean, we have the 3 lower levels of our soul are reflected in our 3 levels of daily davening. We daven Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv every day. When we come to Shabbos, there's an extra level, and that's Musaf. But when we come to Yom Kippur, we have a 5th davening, which is Ne'ilah, and the Ne'ilah is a way of representing this 5th level to our soul. Now, let me give you an example. we have an example of trust with doctors and the things. So I want to try and give you an example of the higher, the fifth level, which is Yehida. You have, let's say you have a normal. Let's take this example assumes healthy, functional, normal people, right? You have a family, husband, wife, 3 children, dog, whatever's normal. Whatever's normal.
Well, these days, dog is normal.
Yeah, it is, sure.
Dog is the only normal.
So you have this family interrelating, and it has its good days. The children behave, they don't behave. The parents agree, they don't agree. They fight, they don't make up. It's normal life, normal push and pull of normal life. Then you have one of those children is a problem. Is a problem for himself, and therefore a problem for his siblings, and therefore a problem for his parents. And the problem gets worse, it doesn't get better, it becomes more of a strain, it becomes more of a problem, until it gets to the point where the parents are beside themselves. They don't know what to do with this kid. This kid he's stealing, and he's going to be going to jail, and he's on drugs, and whatever else the problems of this poor kid are. And so the parents meet. I've given this example before. The parents meet and decide they can't keep him in the house any longer because he's a danger to the other kids and to his cousins and to his... So they throw him out, and the kid goes and lives in his flat, and they haven't seen him for 6 months. All of a sudden they're called to a hospital because he's just been run over. So at that moment that they're called to the hospital that he's run over, they don't get changed, they don't ring up their friends, they just drop everything and run. And when they get to the hospital and they're sitting next to the bed and saying Tehillim and begging God to spare their child, and so they're not thinking about his lack of behavior and the way he wasn't fitting in with his siblings and how disobedient he was. Their child and they are communicating essence to essence, essence to essence. And that's the level of Yehida. When a Jew wants to access his God, the level is essence to essence. Okay, so let me tell you about liquid that you all know. There are 3 kinds of liquid, and with each kind there is a greater degree of difficulty in harnessing that liquid. Water is the most common and easy to get and free. Juice is harder to get, does have a cost, but finally oil is very difficult to get, very expensive. And when we're talking olive oil, you have to know that olive oil isn't achieved by just squeezing the orange or the lemon. It needs crushing, and it needs crushing to a very specialized way to crush it, and to get drops of oil out of great crushing of many olives. So water is compared to the nefesh, ruach, and neshama of a Jew, the first 3 levels, which is in the body. Juice is compared to the supra logical level, which is high. But oil, and in particular olive oil, is what is manifested physically and represents the Yehida, and it is represented by Mesiras Nefesh. When a Jew gets to a point where, I'll give you some examples of the Yehida. in his book, what's his name, on the Holocaust, Frankel's book, he points out that there are Jews who kept nothing in Europe, in Poland, in Hungary, in Ukraine. There were plenty of secular Jews who kept nothing. They lived with Jews, they had a social life with Jews and a culture with Jews, but they didn't keep anything much. And if they kept something, they kept a little bit. Came the time for them to be in a prison camp, and they would suddenly balk and refuse to do something which was contrary to the mitzvah system and give their life for it. On what logic? They spent their whole lives violating it before. They were eating pork all their life. They're eating bacon and eggs every morning. Suddenly the German Nazi gives them pork on Yom Kippur, and they'd rather die than eat the pork or eat on Yom Kippur. What is this? This is the Yechida. This is essence. This is when a Jew's essence is shown. Most of the time it's locked up and hidden. It's accessible, don't get that wrong. It's accessible by each of us individually, and we have the koyach, the power, to access our God with our essence, essence to essence. It's a matter of practice and a matter of sincerity. Okay. So let's go back to the Greeks. The Greeks had no problem with nefesh, ruach, and neshama. They even had no problem with chaya, with this concept of trust. They accepted that there were things that were beyond that, rational. So with what we did that's rational, they were fine. With what we did with emotional, they were fine. What we did with action, they were fine. Providing you just kept within their legal system, they were fine. And they were even fine with the level of trust. They were even fine with the level that supernatural. But the moment a Jew says, I'm keeping a mitzvah because God told me to, they cannot, that was absolutely out of the question. Excuse me. And the miracle that we keep on Hanukkah is the miracle of which understands that at the real core of our existence, it has to be essence to essence. It has to be the Yechida and it cannot be defiled. And what does defiled mean? We're not talking about being made dirty. We are talking about the purity of our essence being tampered with. And Jews have not allowed that. And we are not allowed to allow it. So when the Greeks defiled everything in the temple, and it's not well understood that, by the way, it's perfectly kosher to light the menorah with regular oil, contaminated oil. Did you know that? You didn't have to have non-contaminated oil. Yeah, better is the non-contaminated oil. But halakhically, if the Kohen had to relight the menorah and there was no proper oil left, what does it mean proper oil? Supervised with a KA signature on it by the Kohen Gadol. If you didn't have that, you could use ordinary oil. So what was the big deal? And the question becomes even stronger. So what was the big deal about why did there have to be a miracle of that oil burning for the 7 days? And the miracle of it being found, that's the first day, and then another 7 days. making a total of 8 days of that miracle. Why was that necessary? And if you want to say that even if it was necessary, why is that a greater miracle than the fight where the yeshiva bochrim take on the army? You know, Tzemach Tzedek goes out to fight against the Australian army. Can you imagine? It's really laughable. And win. So, but the question isn't whether or not the oil is halakhically permitted. The question is that at the end of the day, a Jew's life has to be absolutely sacrosanctly essence to essence with his God. There can't be a contamination of that. There can't be and you know, it's very interesting how this is played out in all our habits as observant Jews. I'll give you an example. You make Kiddush Friday night. Our minig is to fill the Kiddush cup.
Yes.
Why do we fill the Kiddush cup? Because we don't want there to be anything but wine when we make the bracha. We want it pure wine. We don't put water in it. We don't have it half full of air. We fill the Kiddush cup. I mean, I once had a guy who used to come to this year 100 years ago, and his kids, to his dismay, he had 3 kids, and 2 of them had become black sheep of the family and become Lubavitchers. So and they were invited. They both got him invited to a Shabbos lunch. So he goes to this Shabbos lunch with his wife, and they had a lot of people, probably 1 million of guys, and according to our minig, everybody makes Kiddush for themselves.
Yeah.
So Friday night, that is not Shabbos day, but Friday night we all make Kiddush for ourselves. So everybody, and he was invited to make Kiddush. He said he didn't know how to, so it's okay. So you'll be yoitzer with somebody else. And he watched somebody fill the cup, and it spilled over, because we like to spill it over. So the cup spilled over, and he sort of stopped himself trying to correct it. And then the next guy made Kiddush, and then by the time it was halfway down, he thought, these guys are all incapacitated in some way. They can't judge when to stop with the wine. And then he thought, maybe they're drunks. Maybe that's why they do it, because they're drunks, you know. So I got off track. The point is that even when we make Kiddush, we want the cup to be full of nothing else but what we're doing. When we daven, it's very difficult. You're supposed to daven with concentration. When we've got an obligation to say Shema twice a day, 3 times a day, depends. Multiple times a day. You've got to concentrate. And because that's so difficult, the halakha is that you have to concentrate on the first line, and if you've done that, then you've done your duty. So, what is the mitzvah system? So the mitzvah system, you should know. Now, I'm going to disappoint some of you, maybe superficially, but I hope we'll get through it. There are no logical reasons for the mitzvahs. Sorry to tell you, there are just, we perform 613 mitzvahs because it's Ratzon Hashem, because it's the will of Hashem. Hashem has told us to do it, and we do it as from Yidden, if you are from, or if you're not from. The mitzvahs that you keep because God said to do it. You don't do it because it's socially beneficial, it's healthy, it gives you better perspectives, it gives you peace of mind, it allows you to sleep better at night. All true, but that's not why we do it. We do it, let's take some examples. There are people who tried over the centuries to prove But kashrus is great, deep Jewish wisdom. Why? Because it's healthier. And they tried to prove that milk after meat is a problem with acid, what's acidic and what's alkaline, and certain creatures like pigs don't refrigerate, go off quickly without refrigeration, and carry this danger and that danger. All may be true and all may not be true. It's got nothing to do with it. Our kashrus is, we keep kashrus as a hoik. A hoik means a mitzvah that has no sense. The truth is that all of our mitzvahs are hukim. Why? Because although some of them do appear to make sense to us, and some of them appear to make sense more than others, so you have mishpatim and Adis, and you have but really none of them. Let's take some examples. We have a mitzvah of shatnez. You have a mitzvah of shatnez. It makes absolutely no sense that you can't mix woolen with linen. Why not? Why can't you mix wool and linen? What logical reason is there not to mix wool and linen? And even if you can find a logical reason, if you can overcome that logical reason, you think it excuses you from the obligation for shatnez? It doesn't. You know, we're not allowed to play an instrument on Shabbos, right? The piano. You're not allowed to. Why can't you play the piano on Shabbos? The Rabbonim made a takana, a decree, that you can't play the piano on Shabbos because if it breaks, you may go and fix it. And if you're going to fix it, you'll hive the boiner. Boiner means building, right? We have a piano. I like to plonk away on the piano. I wouldn't do it in front of anyone else because I'm so terrible at it, but I enjoy it. I'd love to play on Shabbos. Shabbos is a day of rest, a day of spirit, and I've got some spiritual music and if my piano broke, you think I could fix it? I wouldn't have the faintest idea how to fix it.
You would do it anyway.
But am I now allowed to say that because I can't possibly fix it, I can play the piano on Shabbos? You can't. So the reasons, there may be reasons which you can accord to what's going on, but that's got nothing, at the end of the day, it's got nothing to do with it. The reason we keep the mitzvahs, all 613 of them, are that they are hukim, they are Ratzon Hashem. They're Hashem's will, and we are obedient to that. Now, and to what extent? To the extent that for 3 of the mitzvahs, we have to die rather than there are many mitzvahs where it's halakhically required of us under certain circumstances not to do the mitzvah. But that isn't that we're not doing the mitzvah. We're doing the mitzvah of not doing the mitzvah because that's the halakha. So if you're dying of starvation and the only thing there is to eat is pork, you have to eat the pork. Because you're not allowed to intentionally kill yourself. Now, was this understandable to the Greeks? No. This is the issue of Hanukkah. That they weren't bad people. They weren't bad to Jews. On the contrary, Jews lived very well there. They were respected and admired. They had places in government. They had places in the arts and in the sciences. But they just didn't get this extra level of our existence where we are obedient to our God simply because we're told to be by Hashem. And they said, prove it. What are you talking about? How do you know? Oh, we have it in the Torah. Who says the Torah is true? Prove it. Now, we have proofs. There are internal proofs and there are external proofs. The external proofs are we haven't got time for them tonight, and the internal proofs we don't have time for tonight. But still, the reality is that that is not why we keep the Torah. We keep the Torah because Hashem told us to. And that's what being a Jew is. So if you want to know what a Jew is, you can't say we're a race, because that's a joke, because if you want to say we're a race, I have to ask you, what about converts? I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever, right? And if we are not, and we're a religion, that makes no sense, because I know the majority of Jews living today are totally secular. They keep nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. But try telling some of them that they're not Jews. They won't be happy with that.
No.
They're proudly Jewish, especially Israelis. I mean, there are Israelis that are so proud of being Jews and keep nothing, proudly keep nothing, right? So you can't say that we're a race. You can't say that we're a religion. You can't say that we're a culture, because I can tell you that the culture of the Sephardim and the culture of the Ashkenazim is so different, that completely different. So what are we? Answer is, we are a people who at one level or another, and it may take a lifetime to uncover it, have a consciousness that they are prepared to, at some time or other in their life, do what God says. That's what being a Jew is. And the extraordinary thing about your and my life is, and you know, everybody here in this year, and I'm sure most of the people who listen to it, although I know there are some Lubavitchers that listen to it, who were born Lubavitchers, but for most of us, we've come from backgrounds where this was an adventure. This was a journey, and still is a journey. You know, I remember when I was told the first mitzvah, and I was told to do it, my teacher said to me, you know, think carefully before you take it on, but once you take it on, never give it back. Never give it back. So, and that's a good, you don't have to take on the whole Torah Kula in one leap. We had a guy in yeshiva in the old days when we had Camelot in yeshiva. This is before Gimel Tammuz. And I used to sit next to Rabbi Leader in those days, and a guy comes into shul on a Shabbos on his first adventure, no yarmulke. In those days, Beatles haircuts were still in the last of fashion. He had long hair. I don't remember whether he had bare feet or not, but thongs certainly. And he came in and the old Hungarians at the back of the shul were furious, you know. How can he come? No respect. And Leader loved him, you know. He loved the fact that and to this day, I share with you personally. Nobody cares what I think personally, but I don't want to daven in a shul when I love it when you in a shul where a guy is saying Kaddish and breaking his teeth. Right? I love that. The guy's coming to shul, can't say Kaddish, doesn't know what he's doing, comes there for his parents' neshama, and is prepared to embarrass himself in public trying to say Kaddish. I love that's a yid, you know. So what am I trying to say with this? That there is we all, wherever you are on that journey is personally one of discovering essence to essence. That is the ultimate realization of a Jew's potential. It's not going to Rookwood with the most toys, and it's not the best fillet steak you can possibly get. Somebody told me there's a restaurant in the city, actually he's my physiotherapist, told me there's a restaurant in the city, you can pay $2,000 for a steak. Did you know that? Huh? I don't know. $2,000 for a steak.
So,
That is not a Jew's paradise. You may like to eat. Everybody likes to eat.
Now you're better off in Crown Heights.
But our goal, our growth, our flowering, our realization of potential is developing a conscious relationship with the level of our neshama, which is the Yechidah. And that is the level of the pure olive oil, untainted olive oil. Absolutely 100% pure olive oil. And that was the miracle of Hanukkah. The miracle of Hanukkah was that they could have used other oil, but they didn't. And they waited for the real oil. Why? Because we are different to the Greeks. And what will satisfy Greek culture will not satisfy your and my life. Just doesn't. Doesn't work. It works to some extent, but it doesn't work entirely. So, what each of us needs to take out of the 8 days that commence next Wednesday, Kratzmark, yeah, is that, and this is the huge difference. I'll give you an example. You know, my bookkeeper is amazed at how many people come for Friday night to us. She's not Jewish and she doesn't understand it. And she said, you know, for Christmas she has half of those people and she cooks half a year for that. So now I want to ask you a question. It's traditional for them to serve turkey at Christmas, right? And they have their family come and they serve their turkey and they enjoy themselves and it's lovely and they kolakavod, right? But I want to ask you a question. If you said to one of those people, how much turkey do you need to eat to satisfy the obligation for? I think you're crazy, right? How much turkey do you have to eat? Now I want to ask you a different question. We have Seder night. We have the same cooking and the same food, and we have Seder night. Now you have to eat matzahs, right? Is it now a stupid question of how much matzahs do you have to eat? We have to drink 4 cups of wine. Is it now a stupid question whether you have to drink the 4 cups of wine or not? It's a completely different perspective. Our perspective is one of serving our God by listening to them, doing the mitzvahs. Theirs is to get together, have a lovely family affair, maximize the pleasure of it, do it as economically as possible, and then go home and sleep it off. Right? And there's nothing. I don't want this to sound critical because I don't mean it to be critical.
But it's different.
But it's different. It is simply different. Our eating on Pesach night is a spiritual experience, and we have to do that spiritual experience with pure of ordinary oil. It's halakhically possible. I mean, Jews are born and die and live their lives with ordinary oil. But that's not the main game. That's not our main game. That's not where real fulfillment and flowering and happiness and contentment and serenity comes from. It comes from opening up the dialogue, essence to essence, neshama, at the level of the neshama, which is Yechidah, to your dialogue with your God. And we do that by the mitzvahs, and the mitzvahs are personified by the olive oil. So I hope that's going to help you guys and me too.
Brilliant.